This game was my only not top five of the tournament, so wanted to dive into this one.
Prismatic Prelude.
So looking at the Exalted with the Mumu drop,
Which one is Exalted? Is it
Mumu
Kobuko,
Senna.
Senna, Amumu? Oh, yeah, that's not too bad. That's Yeah, you can definitely play around that.
So I was leaning, if I get some sword, gloves, or bows, I could lean sniper.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I already have the Kog'Maw pair as well.
Hey, it's like it could be a solid start as long as you hit the pairs here. I actually think it might be worth it to make Econ in that spot.
Okay, so you'd sell the Amumu too, or I guess you'd sell
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
these,
because
right?
it's nice to consider the Exalted option, but if you're trying to play around Exalted, you kind of need to hit the next shop exactly, right? You get one goal's worth every single round. But if I can make the econ right now, that's essentially the same thing, right? But it's guaranteed. And you can still hold on to your value pairs, right? If I say sell these three costs plus the Kobuko, I'm going to be able to make 10 anyways. That's something worth considering, right?
So I guess I'm also thinking holding all the three costs gives me a lot of outs. I could hit a Timo for Fortune. I could hit the Senna
Mm-hmm.
for Exalted. I could hit like Fortune Crest. I could hit. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know
that's
if
true. You could
Kobuko.
definitely hit fortune. Yeah, it's not sort of like a straight shot, but it's definitely something worth considering. Because even if you're playing for Ash, for example, if I
Yeah,
can make the 10 here, if you don't hit the pairs immediately, I don't think there's really a spot where you can try to win streak with this board right now.
right.
Right? It's definitely worth considering just making the econ.
In that case, would it be worth keeping the Mumu if I know I have the bow and I could lean sniper and selling the Malphite?
Yeah, you can also sell the Malphite if you want. Yeah, you can also say hold a Mumu and sell
Like,
everything
yeah, just sell all
else over
this
there.
plus this.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Okay.
just some form, whatever you value a bit more is perfectly fine. If you really wanted to play around Fortune, for example, you can still make 10 here, right? So it's just like being a bit decisive, saying, like, okay, I value this particular thing the most, still make 10, and then just go for that. But, there is some merit in saying, like, I want the particular out. But, I think, like, one goal at this part in the game, especially if you're trying to play for later levels, is always going to be, like, a lot of value, right?
Hmm.
But this is fine too. Okay, interesting.
So I could take Living Forge and try to hope to hit one of the Bard reroll
Hmm.
artifacts. Otherwise, I would probably roll these two.
Yeah, yeah. There are a couple options. I mean, I think honestly, any of these are fine. If you take hedge fund, you can just play for loss streak, and if you can get fortune in, then you can essentially play for a very strong late game, right?
Mm,
If you really wanted to, sort of, I mean, Heavenly Crown is not only good because actually, you didn't sell the Kazakhs, did you? I think the
no.
Kazakhs are
Yeah,
still on
so
the
I still
bench,
have the
right?
Malphite and two.
So
Yeah.
if you really wanted to like win streak here, I think Heavenly Emblem definitely a very strong take. So that's probably quite consistent. Not only is it good in the data, but it's also good for what you have right now, right?
Mm,
That's why I think that's probably the most solid option.
okay.
Um,
Would
but any
you?
any option is like not too bad.
Yeah. Would you? If you took Heavenly Crown, would you stay at three and try to hit the Kazakhs two, or level and hope that you hit it
Yeah, I would probably
down the road?
level. I think that hitting a Kiana, hitting any sort of even Soraka is quite good right now. So if
Hmm.
you can get any of those units or something that can hold the Hodge like a little better, then it's always worth it to level here. Because like Kha'Zix 2 is not going to be the unit that's going to help you win if you take Heavenly, right?
Right.
It's going to be the stuff that you play around.
Okay.
But there's no absolute correct answer.
So now going long is like pretty much good for what, three cost reroll?
You can, I generally think going long is best as sort of like a tempo into like just get as many units as you can on the board
Uh-huh.
and then try to play for four costs still. It's just
Oh, I
like in
see.
general, whatever is strongest in the meta, you can use going long as sort of a way to enable that.
How late do you get to level eight relative to the
Oh,
rest
you
of the
get
lobby?
you
Do you
get to
know?
level 8 very early. I think if you take
Oh,
going long,
earlier?
you're going to be level 7 probably at the start of stage 3.
And then you get to 8 by end of stage 3 then?
Yeah, end of stage 3 or so. Yeah, that sounds
Oh,
about
okay.
right. Yeah, so that's in general. I think like going long. I'm pretty sure the best units with going long are all like high cost units.
Yeah, I guess here it
Um,
says 5 costs.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm. Yeah, because
Okay.
it's very easy to push levels with going long. It's not like March where you're sort of stuck in this spot of, oh, I can't push levels and I'm stuck not being able to push levels, so I'm forced to reroll, right? Going long is more so I get this extra sort of injection of XP and I'm just going to play for the high cost units. It's like, what is the augment that sort of like reduces your interest, gives
Oh,
you 2
low
gold?
interest something.
Yeah, low interest rates or something. It's very similar. It's just like more. It's more basically.
Okay.
And
So
stuff
this
like
is
that.
usually you're primarily picking this when you're likely strong, like
Yeah,
just try
yeah,
tempo.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. So it seems like all of these are viable options.
yeah, yeah. They're definitely takeable.
Okay.
I try to avoid new recruit early on. I think that the value that you get out of that augment, if you can take it later, the better.
Mhm.
And I think if you look at the stats, it sort of uh,
Not
reflects
great
that,
on
right?
2-1.
The later you take new recruit, the better it tends to
Yeah.
perform,
Because the champ
especially if you get it at
duplicator
4-2.
doesn't
Yeah,
get value. And then the extra team size, while it can maybe can help you tempo, you are deploying a lot more gold on your board. So you can
yeah,
econ as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Okay. So I took Living Forge,
Okay.
and then out of these, I assume Eternal
Interesting
Winter on the
options.
Cho
Eternal
makes the most sense,
Winter.
or
Yeah,
Gold
I mean,
Collector.
Eternal Winter is probably the best for your board right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly okay to take Eternal Winter here. Yeah, I mean, like the other items aren't going to be doing much for you, so
Mm.
that's unless you're trying to like hard force a unit that really uses those particular items very well. It's probably best to take Eternal Winter. Okay, and then yeah, I mean, most of the time if it's Eternal Winter, it's probably going to be like a front to back.
Hmm.
Um,
So here, I
Interesting.
think I got super baited.
Mm.
I think this happens to me a lot. Every time I see Fortune, I just want to play it.
I mean,
And
it's not a bad sort of it's not a bad habit to play Fortune. I think it's okay to play Fortune here this
yeah.
early on.
So how would you approach that? Because would you sell the Cho and just try to lose streak, or
Oh, I mean, if I'm playing Fortune, I would sell whatever is potentially going to help me win the round, and I would just get that off the board, and
okay, so
always
you're
just
just
try to hold
committing to
loose.
Fortune.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
In which case, in that scenario, you're probably leaning Kaisa.
yeah, yeah. Leaning Kaisa, well, you can still play Ash if you're playing Fortune, right? But yeah, I think the AD
Yeah.
lines tend to be a bit easier to play around, right? Either of those two, I think, is perfectly fine.
Okay. I th- I think that I want to say the Ink Shadow is Toxin, which would be good too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. Although I was thinking like this board seems strong enough to win streak as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, if you're not going to play Fortune, that's also like completely valid. If you think your board is strong enough at this point in the game, you can do that. But this is sort of like the worst of both worlds, right?
I was thinking if I
Potentially winning the
win, then
round
great.
here.
I could keep like just like maybe take out the fortune units. If I lose, I
Mhm.
maybe lose by a little bit, and then I can
Yeah,
actually
that's true.
commit
That's
to.
true too. I do think if you're going to commit to playing Fortune here, you should probably try to make Econ.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't really matter what you have, right? Because you losing this round means you gotta lose. You gotta keep on losing, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I'd sort of commit to that and just say like make econ, make as much econ as I can so that I can go level 8, get my cash out, get everything that I need on the board, right? Things like holding the Amumu 2, it's a little bit preemptive, right? If you're trying to play the lose streak fortune, the Amumu 2 is only going to be an econ sink. Because
Right.
you're not going to be playing around it until the late game, and you can always find more moves later on, right? That's sort of the big
Hmm.
thing.
Okay. So out of these items, it seems like Virtue or Aegis would work well to synergize with the Eternal Winter.
Yeah, Virtue is nice. Yeah, I'd probably go for Virtue. Aegis is also okay. It does some weird things with the positioning though.
Right.
So I think Virtue is probably your best bet.
So that guy was already full opening and not much I could
Mm-hmm.
do about that. So then I was kind of thinking like most likely I'm So here, I thought I was gonna lose. I've got. I think I'm over relying on this percent win chance thing.
Hmm. Oh yeah. I didn't even realize that was the thing. Yeah. I think this early on, you kind of just want to ensure.
Yeah.
Probably not even worth it to slam items. It's just like just leave them off the board. If they look like they have even a remote chance of beating you, there's no point. There's no point in slamming anything.
Okay. Because that's like saving maybe 2 HP or something.
Yeah,
If I
I mean
did.
the amount of HP that you save in the early game is always going to be like pretty negligible, I would say. Early
Yeah.
game right now, you don't take nearly enough HP to justify like you know if I take a 5 unit loss, I don't really care too much. I'm only losing like what 7 HP, right?
And then now I'm like kind of screwed
Yeah,
because
and this is the thing where it comes down to like the econ breakpoints. I think you could be at 30 gold right now, right? There's a world where you're 30 here.
mhm. I think I've just played so much Fortune where I just am full opening and then I'm like cash out. I get like a 40 cash out, but then I have 1 life or 2 lives left, and then I just meet a
Hmm.
high roller and I die.
Oh
So
yeah. I mean, so the thing is with fortune, you kind of have to play for that because that's how you're gonna that's gonna be how you sort of get the max cap. If you play this sort of like I'm kind of weak, but I don't get to keep my loss streak, so I don't even get that big of a cash out, but I'm also losing a lot of HP. That's like the worst of both worlds, right? You're not gonna get to the spot that you want, and you're also not gonna get you're gonna be low health, but you're also not gonna have that big of a cash out. So, what it really comes down to is how decisive are you? Like, how how decisive can you be in this spot? Because a lot of points in TFT is just like trying to be as decisive, like just being decisive about it. You kind of have to commit, or else you're sinking resources into essentially not picking one direction or the other. So you've wasted a lot of resources, right? If I sink half of my resources into playing one way, half of the other, and I end up playing in one particular way, right? You can think of that as like, okay, so the rest of the resources that I spend playing for the other strategy as a potential out, they're sort of out of the window. Sometimes that's okay, right? That's what being flexible is being about, right? But at the end of the day, especially for something that's like high risk, if you're playing for something that's high risk, especially something like Fortune, or you're playing like full loss streak, then you kind of have to be like, okay, I'm going to play for full loss streak. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to commit to that so that I don't sink a bunch of resources into something that's not going to help me, right?
mhm. So then in a tournament setting, like if you generally are just targeting top fours, do you kind of actively avoid fortune scenarios like this?
I don't avoid fortune. What I would say is you just have to assess if it makes sense to play fortune in a particular spot. So if I can be like, okay, I can out lose streak everybody else in the lobby currently. If there's not some guy that's just like full open 0 units, and I know if I play fortune that I can lose, I'll just play fortune because it's not exactly like that high risk. Obviously, like losing a bunch is going to be somewhat risky, but I think the odds are pretty high in your favor. Like if you get a good cash out on 2 lives, even if the game goes very poorly from that point, I think you can still pull off a fifth, right?
Hmm.
It's something that's I think if you get a big fortune cash out with 2 lives, you're not really in a spot where you're going to go eight most of the time. So you're just playing for, okay, I either go fifth or I go first, right? That's sort of what I would say there.
So
But
I already slammed the
yeah.
last whisper here, and I have
Hmm.
the Mumu pair. I have exalted in, so I'm pretty much committed to sniper warden. So out of these, probably combat caster. I mean Pandora's if I feel like I really need the bows.
Yeah. I think combat caster is probably pretty good here. Obviously,
Hmm.
heroic grab bag is like the least important, so that's for sure a reroll. But I think your items, like even if you don't get caught, even if you don't get what is it called, the rage blade, you can still potentially have some outs with your like the portable forge, right?
And then here, Probably Warden Crest since it gets me the Mumu 2 plus Warden
Yeah,
Emblem is pretty
definitely,
strong.
definitely.
Okay.
It's like a very strong point to go for. Yeah, I mean, I think this is quite a strong board. If there's any possible way for you to fit in porcelain, I think it makes it a lot stronger. So if you get to the point where you can get porcelain, it's probably worth it to drop exalted.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think at this point, this is sort of the board that you'd like to have, like to win streak, right? It's a pretty strong win streak board when you have an Amumu 2 with these items.
Right. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit since we're a little bit
Okay.
short on time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so basically I'm looking for like a Lowy and like maybe a
Hmm.
Lux. Of course, like an early Ash would be nice, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, this guy is somewhat strong.
so these are two cost champions. I have an open belt and I have an Amumu too, so I'm leaning like a tier. If it's just item
Okay, so you
component.
have open. I'd probably go for an Ash item actually in this spot.
Oh, okay.
So like either sword or bow.
Okay. But
So
given that it's two costs, I mean there's a Senna 2 there would probably take priority.
yeah, Senna 2 is also pretty decent. Yeah, Senna 2 with chain definitely takeable. But I would still like try to prioritize if you can
Mm-hmm.
getting the Ash items.
Okay.
Like at this point in the game, the defensive items are not that important. So if you can make a redemption, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll be able to get something pretty decent for a Moo regardless, right? Because it already has Declaw and the Eternal Winter. But what you're really lacking on is carry items.
Right. Okay.
So Last Whisper, good, but nothing else for the Last Whisper, right?
And I guess also defensive items. There's plenty of artifacts.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Diamond Hands here is probably that makes the most
Diamond Hands is
sense.
pretty good. I think, yeah, either that. Light Shield
Or
Crest might be also fine. I think that item is not too terrible. But
how
I'm
does that
not.
work
That's
again?
one of
It's
the
like
ones where I probably check the stats in,
okay,
uh, just to make sure that, just to see which one is better. Yeah, how
that
is
would
Light
go
Shield
on who
Crest?
shields in Wardens? Does Amumu heals, right?
Oh no, this is like an autumn. This is like an automatic shield. So it's not if the unit
Oh,
shields. It's like it just provides shielding.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's especially good
but
if you don't have like a gunblade on your Ash and
yeah,
you're
yeah.
facing like
Diamond Hands,
more
although is
Gwilia,
a very good item, so it's probably worth
right?
it to take Diamond Hands and just slap that on the Moo.
Okay,
Yeah, that's just one of the things that I would just check the stats. Whichever one is performing better, I'd probably just yoink that.
mm-hmm. I should have sold this Senna one as well, right? Moved over to the
Oh
Senna
yeah,
two.
yeah, yeah,
I think I still win this fight though.
yeah. I mean, the econ is good. I think you're in like a pretty decent spot here. Um,
Something component anvil, find a blow for Ash.
yeah, that's probably the play. Because at this point, it's really just trying to get Ash items. I would go for Cloak or Belt here.
Okay, cloak for like
Cloak
possibly
for Hurricane or Belt
okay.
for Guard Breaker. Just like try to get whatever you can build into an offensive item for Ash, because
I
that's
see.
really what you're missing, right? You just think about like, because what Chain doesn't really offer you anything more, because you already kind of have tank items on your main frontliner, right? So you really just want to fill out like your backline, try to get your backline in a good spot. Yeah, so like right now the items are like super scuffed, right?
Yeah.
So you have like a lot of frontline, but you only have the Last Whisper, right? So this I think mainly like an item economy thing is just thinking about what do I need here, right? If I already
Mm,
have frontline, there's really no point in going for more frontline components,
yeah.
because you're just going to end up in a spot where you can't really you're going to be out damaged in most of these scenarios, right?
So this is one of those scenarios where that guy I just played had an Ash too. I think there was like at least one other person that is going snipers and maybe already has
Mm-hmm.
an Ash one.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I'm like pretty much committed to still leveling and rolling down, right? At least to find
Yeah,
one
yeah, you're
Ash.
still committed to leveling and rolling down. I think you're not in a spot where you can greed anything, so you just try to level. I would just try to flex Ash Kaisa at this point.
Okay.
One of those two. Right?
Okay. So tiny but deadly probably out of these.
Yeah, yeah. So here you just, especially if you're being contested in this spot, you don't necessarily have to play Ash, right? It's not as if your items are saying you can't play Kaisa. So it's worth it to potentially hold, for example, the Ribbon and maybe try to pivot the whole board in that direction.
Mm,
Although you do have the Warden crest, but you can still play something like Warden plus Kaisa. I think that's like completely viable, especially if you play around Ink Shadow, right?
right.
It's definitely in the cards, right? So here, I think taking the Udyr would be good. I mean, it's even if you're playing Ash, in general, holding Udyr list is like good here. Um,
Hmm.
Udyr especially lets you lean more into the potential to play Kaisa if you absolutely have to, right? But this is an instance where I would say you don't want to be too tunnel visioned on playing the specific comp, right? So not holding list Udyr there could potentially be a little bit costly because those can fit into the comp, right? If you don't specifically play around like six Warden or something like that, right?
Yeah. Would Udyr list be stronger than like six Warden right now? Take out the
Yeah,
Cobra
yeah. I
like
mean, for sure. Or you can drop Exalted. There's a lot of stuff that you can do here, right?
I see. So
I would
Ash.
probably. This is an instance where I would probably just drop the Senna to play Ash.
Okay.
I think she's definitely stronger than Senna too.
Mm-hmm.
And it is going to give you Porcelain for the Mumu, which is
Right.
also even a bit more important than who you have your items on.
Okay.
Um,
So this is actually one of the scenarios I was talking about. I didn't realize it was this game around like me going nine. Because like
oh,
I guess going nine lets me play six Warden, four Sniper, and then I think there were at least five Ashes out of the pool from my opponent. And I have the sixth,
yeah, yeah. So
and I have
I
Exalted, which helps me get there a little faster.
Yeah, I think if you can manage to win a couple rounds, it's not terrible. But if you're continuously losing rounds, it's a bit too risky. And the main thing that I would say here is like this is a big pro. I think this boils down to itemization again. Your backline isn't doing that much damage in this spot,
Hmm.
so the fights might not play out that well in a lot of these instances. Let's see. I think if you go nine, it's not terrible, but
And I should have stuck the
you still
Virtue
might
on
not
front
hit
line.
any upgrades, right? And that's a big thing here. I think that going nine, you did have econ to hit a few units, but not specifically Ash,
Hmm.
right? So if you want to go nine, I would lean more towards playing for a more likely out.
Yeah,
Um,
and so also here, Ash items on Ash
Ash
would be
is
better
probably
than.
better, I think,
Okay.
just because of the porcelain and no faded. Um,
Okay. So you would have rolled on level 8 instead of going 9.
Yeah, I would have rolled on level 8, but I don't think it's like a clear cut which one is correct or not. The thing is, if you're going to go 9, you shouldn't leave only Ash as your potential out here. So that's the biggest thing, right? I can go 9 and I can hit Kaisa 2 and I can stabilize off of that. There's a lot of stuff that you can potentially go for there.
Hmm.
The problem with going 9 here, right? This is the big thing. You go 9. Let's say your comp is being like double contested by two other people, right? And they already have a good portion of the units. You can't go 9 then and then hit outs if you're not like looking for the outs, right?
Right.
So if I'm going 9 and I'm still committed to playing Warden, Warden Ash, then what am I potentially hitting that I could hit differently from level 8, right? Because if I'm still looking at those same units and they're being contested, I might as well just roll the extra gold on 8 instead of using that money to go 9. Um, if I'm thinking, okay, I can go 9 and I can hit something, it doesn't have to be Ash. Like if I get, you know, Kaisa 2, I'll play the Kaisa 2 instead. I'll play, whatever. Or if I even high roll a Zaya, I can play around the Zaya, right? So that's like the big thing is you can go 9, but even if you go 9, there's still a chance that you're not going to hit, especially if you're being a bit too narrow in what you're looking for, right?
Hmm.
That's the big thing is like you go to 9 to increase the number of outs you have. right? That's sort of a big thing. A lot of times it's like, can I hit the legendaries? But also you're increasing your other four cost odds, right? And so if you're doing that, potentially hit the trick shots, potentially hit something else, and then you have your out there, right? If I hit Zaya 2, I probably can still top 4 off of that, right? Zaya 2, I can probably find some way to play around wardens with that stuff, right?
So you try
But
to
that's
get
just,
a
yeah.
Jackson with the Udyr that I had, and then maybe like throw in an Ornn.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. Just play around a strong board, right? So, I mean, like, you can kind of tell when you're looking at, like, the way that you're playing out that game, right?
yeah.
Very heavily indexing towards Ashe, right? But if you're playing, you do have the Warden Augment, right? And that's why you kind of want to play a bit more in the direction of Ashe. But that's not the only out, and especially if the Ashes are out, that's when you kind of have to be like, okay, I might not hit Ashe 2 here. What can I possibly play for?
Hmm.
If you have the Rage Blade, it's a little bit difficult. But in that spot, you didn't have the Rage Blade already, right? You actually
Yeah.
had a spot where you could have gone for like Last Whisper GS instead of Last Whisper Rage Blade. You could have definitely played towards Kaisa 2. You could have played towards Zaya 2. Um,
So would you have rolled down on level 8 with that goal to try to hit Kaisa 2 instead then? I mean, obviously you
I
try
would
to
have,
hit the Ash, but
yeah, I would have tried to hit the Ash, and if I hit something else, I'll play around that instead.
yeah.
Um, that's sort of what I would go for. Because like even in this spot, right? Like what I was saying about the front line. If your front line is strong enough, then it's fine because you're
Hmm.
enabled and you can do whatever you want. Even in this case, I think the front line looks quite weak,
Yeah.
right? Relatively speaking. Obviously, you have a Mumu too, but every other unit that's upgraded is not exactly a solid frontline unit, right? At this
Hmm.
point in the game. So
Okay.
because of that, you kind of really want to roll down because you not only can hit, Ash if you hit Ash too great, you can also hit the Nautilus, you can also hit a Lowy. There's a lot of stuff that the sport is missing right now that it kind of needs, right?
Yeah.
So pushing the levels when you're specifically going for this comp is a little bit too risky. Like if you're still playing specifically for Ash, you're likely not going to hit, regardless.
So then would you
Um,
have done the roll down on like 4-2?
yeah, 4-2 roll down would have been fine, but greeting this much, yeah, I would have done it on 4-2 just because you're still losing rounds, right? If you're
Mm.
64 health, you kind of want to start, turning that around, and you do have the gold to do it, right? You have plenty of gold here. Rolling 35, 40 gold on this level, that's still plenty, right? You can still hit a lot. You can hit not two. You can hit some kind of backliner. So yeah, I think the main three takeaways from this game. One is like item economy, right? Uh, just making sure that you can get the backline items built out once you already have your frontline, right? Because you have so many frontline items here, I would try to get as many carry items afterwards as possible.
Hmm.
Um, that's the first thing. The second thing is, in these late game roll downs, what can you do to sort of find additional outs, right? So if you take the warden, it's not, obviously Ash is the best possible scenario. If I can get Ash 2, that's the best thing that can happen. If somebody already has Ash 2, what else can I do? I can still hit Ash 2, and it doesn't really matter. If I don't hit Ash 2, what are my other options, right?
Mm.
If I have this Last Whisper slammed, you need to keep, the idea of playing something like Kaisa open, right? Or else, if you don't hit, you're going to lose way harder than if you like. Even if Kaisa's not the best option, she can still give me a fifth, right? And
Right.
in a tournament, that's what you're doing. You're playing for placements, right?
Hmm.
So you kind of want to go for that fifth if you can, right? And it's going to be very easy to hit Kaisa too if there are no other Kaisa players in this lobby, right? If everybody else is going for the Ash and going for the AP units, you're going to be able to hit for free, right?
Hmm.
So that's the big thing. It's those two. If you get the, if you can see those outs, you're probably gonna. That's gonna be, some potential placements to get.
Okay. And you said there was a third main point?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the third one
Was
was.
it the
Items.
fortune one?
Yeah, the
Like
fortune thing. The fortune thing.
just
Yeah, just
commit to
like
losing
committing to
instead
a
of
specific.
yeah.
Like, if you have a specific spot either commit to the win streak if you see that you can win streak, or commit to fortune and commit to the loss streak, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whichever one you think, there's no one correct answer, right? There's no one correct answer. There is a wrong answer, which is trying to do both simultaneously, right?
Right.
That's sort of what you don't want to do. Um, it's like a difference
Okay.
between committing to a strategy and committing to a comp. Your comp is still wide open, right? If you play fortune or if you play for win streak, the thing is the strategy you want to commit to one specific side, either full loss, or if you think your board is strong enough, then play for that win streak, right? If you have the units to play for the win streak, then that's what you should do, right? So just like evaluating that and saying like, okay, this is what I need to do, and that's where scouting helps. We're looking at what the rest of the lobby is doing. That's going to help you a lot. If you can get there, then you can make the decision will probably be a bit easier for you. But just like making sure that you commit to one, that will come back to affect one your early game econ, right? Things like what units can you sell to make econ at that sort of like point off of the creep drops, whether or not you can streak, whether all of those things is sort of just like you just want to make sure that you know what you want to do. Keeping the options open is fine. I mean, especially if you're trying to win streak, like if I'm pulling my pairs, stuff like that. But if it's specifically like a strategy, either I'm trying to win streak, either I'm trying to lose streak. You can't really do both, right? They're mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
So what you want to do, if I'm going to hold my pairs, that means I'm going to play for a strong board. I'm strictly going to play for a strong board. I'm going to slam my items and I'm going to try to win streak. And I'm not going to even think about fortune, right? At least for that stage of the game. Maybe if you want to get it in stage 3 and sort of like, okay, I've fallen off, now I can start losing, then that's fine. But you have to sort of make the decision, right? Because that's you're sinking resources into. You're sinking health and you're sinking econ, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, that's the main thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. This is helpful. Hopefully, I can take some of these learnings and apply
Yeah,
them to the
yeah. I mean,
tournament.
hopefully bring this to day 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, awesome.
All right. Well, good luck in the tournament today,
Yeah, good luck
and
to you as well.
I'll see you next time.